Wow. I think I just might have found a gun. Maybe. Alright. Let's see if I can get this thing apart. I guess it's a gun. Could be. Kind of heavy. Wow. That's pretty insane. I don't know. I haven't really seen anything like this before. Huh. Maybe it's a gun. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's something else. Got to do some research. Yes, it turned out to be a gun. Just a very unusual gun. This is an 1861 Savage Navy revolver. You can tell by the trigger setup on it that it's very unusual. When I first found it, I didn't really know what to make of it. As it turns out, these were only made for a few years, right around the start of the Civil War. And I think there was 20,000 of them that were made. 12,000 of them went to the Union, and another 8,000 were sold privately, and a lot of those ended up in the Confederacy. Including right here in Virginia, there was at least 3 different cavalry units that used the Savage Navy revolver. Obviously, this is not the whole gun, this is only part of it. I've been back to the site where I found it several times and haven't had any luck. But what I did find the last time I was down there was a barrel to an Enfield muzzleloader. This may well have been one of the ones that the Union Army disabled when they came through here. If you look closely, you can see that the tang is twisted and broken. And there's also some very deliberate marks on the barrel where somebody was banging on the barrel trying to bend it. Union soldiers weren't stupid. They knew that Enfields were deadly from at least 300 yards. Both of these relics were absolutely caked in rust when I dug them up. And especially with the pistol here, I wanted to get all of the rust off of it so I could examine it closely, see if there were any markings on it or any numbers. And it seemed like the only way to do that was to use electrolysis. So I now have my own process for using electrolysis to get rust off of relics like this. And today I'm going to go over that entire procedure with you. It's really relatively simple, but there are certain steps that you have to follow if you want to get a good result. Okay, so for this test, we're going to use this interesting looking horseshoe that I found recently and see if we can get all of the rust off of it, which is fairly substantial. I've done a little bit of filing on it here and there to make sure that we can get a good connection. Okay, so as far as the ingredients for my solution, I use Arm & Hammer Laundry Booster for my electrolyte. A lot of folks do. Just about everybody I know who does electrolysis uses Arm & Hammer Laundry Booster. Now the ratio I use is 1 full cup for every 10 gallons of water. And that seems to work best. My setup is fairly simple. I just used a plastic foot tub, and for my sacrificial anodes I use rebar linked together with thick copper wire. Rebar seems to work really good. Other people use other things, lawnmower blades and what have you. Just make sure that whatever you're using is not galvanized. And it's also important to make sure that you're hooked up properly. You're going to want your positive lead hooked up to the sacrificial anodes, and the negative gets hooked up directly to the relic. Now some people like to hook it up to the wire that's holding the relic, but I find I get better results by hooking it up to the relic itself. But you want to make sure that you have a good connection, because if you don't have a good connection, it won't be bubbling. And if it's not bubbling, it's not doing anything. So obviously we're moving right along here. So we're going to check back in a couple hours. This is my DC power supply that I use for all my electrolysis projects. You can use a battery charger, a lot of people do, but get one of the older manual battery chargers, not one of the new automatic ones, because the new automatic ones will sense that there's a short and they will shut down. Another thing to keep in mind is that you are producing hydrogen. So it's a good idea to do this in a well-ventilated area or outside. I have a covered porch here, so this works very well for me. All right. So this horseshoe has been cooking away in here for over 2 hours now. And now I'm going to shut this thing down, and we're going to take it out and see what we've got. One thing to remember is if you reuse your solution over and over again, that eventually it will evaporate. The water will evaporate, but the electrolyte doesn't evaporate. So add more water, but don't add more laundry booster, because if you do, you'll end up with a really thick solution, and it'll still work just fine, but your power supply will have to work extra hard, and eventually it will burn out. All right, let's rinse this thing off and have a good look at it. Okay, so already you can see that a lot of the rust is already gone, and I'm going to brush some of this away, rinse it off really good. All right, I would say that's a pretty good start for 2 hours. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put it back into the tub, and we're going to just let it cook all night long. And then we'll take a look at it in the morning and see what we got. Good morning, everyone. So this horseshoe has been going through the process now for about 15 hours. And you can see that it's still bubbling. Things have kind of slowed down a little bit. But I can see, just from looking at it, you can see all the rust on the bottom of the tub. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to turn this thing off. We're going to take it out and see where we stand. All right. Looks like a lot of this stuff is loose. I'm going to go ahead and take it into the sink, and we're going to do a little bit of scrubbing on it and have a good look at it. Okay. So as you can see, most of the rust is gone. Not all of it, there's still a little bit there, but a good amount of the rust is gone. You can see places where there are other nails up underneath that you couldn't see before. And you just see a lot more detail. It's going to take probably another maybe 12 to 15 hours to get the last little bit of the rust off of it. I think the thing probably weighs about 50% of what it did just before I put it in the tank. But anyhow, that's going to do it for today. I've got other things that I need to work on. But at some point I will put it back in the tank and I will finish up and we'll get all of this rust off of here. Now there are a few different ways that you can preserve relics after you've gotten all the rust off of them using electrolysis. Some people like to use oil. Other folks like to seal them in wax. Now for me, that doesn't work very well because I find very large relics sometimes buried in the ground. Everything from sewing machines to one of Sherman's neckties. So using wax isn't very practical for me. So what I do is I use 3-in-1 oil. And I will just wipe them down occasionally with 3-in-1 oil and let it soak in. And that seems to work pretty well. So anyhow, next week I will be out in the woods again on another hunt. And as usual, you're welcome to come along and hopefully we can find some good stuff. So if you like what you saw today, please like, share, and subscribe. It would really help me out. And remember, dig it all, fill in your holes, and leave nothing but footprints.